reading between the lines there, that kind of journey that you've been on the hardware to the software side, I guess that's probably teed you up quite nicely, has it? Because I mean, understanding the hardware at that level versus where you are now on the software side, it probably gives you a maybe a better understanding than most. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it gives you certainly a different sort of lens in which to look at it, because
Yeah.
one thing you don't have to consider when you sort of write programs on your computer now in Python or C++ or whatever you choose to write your code in, you don't really have to think about the bits at an individual level. You don't have to think about how you program this 0 and 1. Sure, you might have to think about in sort of more languages like C++, how you allocate memory and things like that, but you don't have to think about, okay, I need to program this 0, this 1, and this individual, and program by the bit. But in quantum computers, because they're still, say, of the order between a few dozen to 100 qubits, you are basically applying individual gates to individual qubits, essentially. So you really have to think how you place those in what's called a quantum circuit, which is just another way of saying a quantum algorithm. And there's certain techniques you use on the hardware side that you can sort of exploit in the software side. So a good example is there's something called a Z gate, which is almost like a bit flip, essentially. But you can almost do that a cheeky way for free in hardware. So it means you don't get these problems by when you apply another gate, you don't have to worry about the extra noise or the loss or the decoherence that we mentioned earlier. So it's sort of almost a cheeky free gate that you can get, and you can say, okay, I can put that in, but it doesn't affect the overall length of my algorithm in a sort of real world terms, because the more gates you had in your bigger algorithms, the more decoherence you have. So by having that extra understanding of what's going on down at the bare metal, so to speak, you have ways in which you can think about of making your algorithms maybe a tiny bit more efficient.
Nice. Yeah, I guess it's all these kind of under the hood type methodologies and kind of tips and tricks that can potentially obviously help you on the software side. So yeah, that's super insightful. So I guess kind of being in a super niche technology area, working as you put it earlier, wearing loads of hats, working in a startup environment, going from that startup to the kind of large kind of corporate environment, how's that kind of transition been?
Yeah, it was a very stark transition. So like you said in the startup, you sort of do a bit of everything. And I remember there's a story though of how it sort of exemplifies how we have to do a bit of everything in a startup. Because when I first joined, I think I was number 7. Then we moved to a bigger premises to sort of build out the startup at the time. There was probably about a dozen of us, if maybe a bit less at that time. But overnight, at one point, we have cooling waters that help cool the sort of machinery that helps keep the quantum computers at the ultra low temperatures that they are. And there was just a burst pipe, and there's no maintenance team you can rely on. You just got to effectively become a plumber at that point. You've got to get on your hands and knees, wipe up all the water on the floor with some blue towels, and then find the source of the leak and try and seal it there and then. And if a wire breaks or goes cold and snaps because of the temperature change, you've got to find that and dissect it yourself. So then one day you become an electrician, and then the other day there's okay, we need to think of ways of, maybe we need some new software that sort of interrogates these qubits in some way. Okay, the next day you're a software engineer now. So as you sort of flip between roles very quickly, and there's not really a process to do things. You get faced with a problem, you sort of fix it. Whereas when you go to a much larger organization, those processes are already in place, and you're there to do that one thing. And there's a whole support network and team. Like there's an IT team if your laptop breaks, or someone else is fixing the plumbing if that breaks, for example. So it was a real sort of stark change in terms of going from like a jack of all trades to being able to focus on your specific task, and how that adds value to a much larger organization as well. So it really is a stark change, but it was a fun one nonetheless. So it's still being exciting today when you get to say to other people, especially in a place like a bank, that you're working on this quantum computing technology, and people get very excited and ask what that's all about.
Yeah. Do you do you have a preference in terms of kind of being super busy in that kind of smaller environment, as you say, wearing the different hats versus being, I guess, more specialist and almost being, I guess, quite consultative? Because I would imagine with quantum, or certainly QC within financial services, it's very much kind of in its infancy, right? So there's probably a ton
Mm.
of folks who are super curious, or like, oh wow, a bit like you back in the day when you were like, oh, what's this kind of weird
Yeah,
wonderful bit?
yeah.
So people are probably curious. Like they're going to be coming to you. They're going to be looking to understand how can it benefit us. Kind of the roles. I mean, pros and cons. You have a preference, or
I don't have a preference. They're just kind of different, right? I guess it's sort of like it was a job change, right? So sometimes you just go from one company to another company. The role or the vibe is a bit different, and that's okay. You can enjoy both. And I think, like you mentioned, especially in a large financial organization, one thing I really enjoy about my job now is there's certainly an education element. So people are asking you about it. They've heard about quantum computing. They're trying to think, oh, who in the bank like is looking into this? And then eventually somehow my name gets to them. So then I end up having these conversations with people from all different parts of the organization. And I remember one time last year we were able to give a sort of educational session to the group MT and the board as well, which was very exciting. So I was able to explain to them, yeah, because when you get that level of interest, it sort of like invigorates you just in a different way to being able to do a bit of everything in a startup, right? So it's just, I guess, it's a different kind of excitement and a different kind of enjoyment from the job. It's more of a education role as well as a sort of software development role at the moment, which is a bit, yeah. I still get the variety, which is fun, which is what I like.
exactly. And given kind of how hard you've studied and kind of where you are on your journey, it's you're well placed, and it must be quite nice knowing that you are genuinely that kind of subject matter expert within a very large kind of company, global business. So yeah, that's got to be super satisfying.